The second part, Serbian Karanovich dynasty, 850 to 320 BC, Macedonia. The Serbs in 9th century BC had more powerful rulers on Helm Peninsula. The kingdom of Paelonia was located in the middle Povardarje, Pelagonia and western Pomoravlje. The capital of Paelonia was the city of Bela Zora, modern Veles. The lower Povardar was ruled by the Mita dynasty, all whose rulers bore the name Mita, as in Crete Mino. Adolf Renak says that Mita was the king of European Mygdonia, area along the left bank of Vardar, before moving to Anatolian Mygdonia. Lenormand claims that Mita was the king of Thrace and Macedonia before he conquered Asia Minor and became its ruler. One of the Mitas had its capital in Vodena, and that city was named after water according to many springs and streams in it. The ruler of Paelonia sent a nobleman with the title of Karan to take over Vodena from Mita. Karan took over Vodena in 840 BC and remained in administration for life. His real name is not known, so it is mentioned only by rank, the title. Karan was succeeded in that capacity by his son Koilo around 785 BC, so Karan became founder of the Karanovich dynasty. The other Karanovich was in Tirim or Turima, who inherited his father around 758 BC. The name of the third Karanovich is unknown, and the fourth was Perdica, who came to power around 700 BC. Perdiccas takes the royal crown and proclaims himself the ruler of the new state, Macedonia. It was a new name, probably derived from a poppy valley. Earlier known names of this country were Media and Paelonia. Perdica I ruled from 700 to 665 BC. At that time, Perdica's brother Europe ruled over a region in middle course of the Vardar, and that region was named Europe after him. That name spread until it became the name of the old continent of Europe. Perdica's successors were Argai, Philip I, Europe, and Alketa. There are no more details about them that data. With Amint I, 540 to 498 BC, we enter the more extensive historical literature on the Karanovich family. Alexander I, 498 to 454 BC, was a very famous ruler in whose time Macedonia appeared as one of the most important states. During the Persian attack on Greece, Alexander played the role of the mediator for concluding peace between those two warring parties. He rearranged the Macedonian army and introduced, in addition to cavalry, a class of noble infantry. His successor, Perdica II, 454 to 413 BC, expanded the territory and influence of Macedonia by waging successful wars against the Greek states. Perdica's son and heir, Archelaus, 413 to 400 BC, built a new capital of Macedonia, Pella. He moved the capital from Vodena to Pella, a city named after the Serbian goddess of beauty and law. Vodena kept the landmark of the holy city where the rulers from Karanovich dynasty were buried. Archelaus' court in Pella was famous for its beauty and decorations, so people came from all over to see this beautiful building. Archelaus' court became a meeting place for all kinds of artists and scientists, and Pella was the largest cultural and educational center of that time. Among the writers who lived in Pella at that time was Euripides, who dedicated one of his works, Archelaus, to King Archelaus. After Archelaus' death, riots and battles broke out around the throne for 10 years until Amnita III, 390 to 370 BC, came to the throne. At that time, there was a powerful Illyria of Emperor Vardilo in northwestern Macedonia. Vardilo was from the tribe of Anti from the river Tara, which united the Serbian tribes in the area between the Adriatic Sea and Sava and between the Morava and Velebit. Vardilo's capital was the city of Sardis, Shkodra, and the largest fortress Tariona, Old Bar. Vardilo occupied Macedonia and expelled King Amnit, thus expanding his empire all the way to the Gulf of Thessalonica. The Karanovich had to agree to a vassal position in relation to Emperor Vardilo. Alexander II, 370 to 368 BC, made an agreement with the Emperor Vardilo and gave him his youngest brother Philip as a hostage. Vardilo introduced young Philip to school of the royal pages. King Alexander II was killed by Greek conspirators in Thessaly. He was succeeded by his younger brother Perdiccas III, 368 to 359 BC. Perdiccas came into conflict with Vardilo, breaking his vassal position towards him. In a battle with Vardilo, Perdiccas was defeated and killed. After the death of King Perdiccas, the third youngest brother, Philip II the Great, came to the helm of Macedonia. Philip passed through the school of Pars near Vardil, and when he became the ruler of Macedonia, he transferred to it the military structure and war technique of the terrible Vardilo. Philip was a man of extraordinary abilities and one of the greatest rulers of the ancient times. Only a year after coming to power in Macedonia, he created a military force equal to Vardilo's. He defeated Emperor Vardilo in a fierce battle and took control of his country. Philip's empire spread from the White Sea to the Danube and from the Black Sea to Velebit. The united Greek cities led by Athens declared war on Emperor Philip II. A decisive battle was taken to Hierona on August 2, 338 BC. In that battle, the combined military force of Greek cities was destroyed, and the whole Greece, except Sparta, fell under rule of Emperor Philip. Shortly afterwards, there was a war between the Macedonian and Persian empires. Philip the Great was killed in Vodena in 336 BC by assassins organized and paid by the Athenians. The last and greatest ruler of all Karanovichi was Alexander III the Great, 336 to 323 BC. Alexander expanded Philip's empire in Europe and conquered the areas around Belgrade and Srem. He undertook the execution of his father's plan to conquer Asia and was the third conqueror of the Serbian race to reach the Indus River. After Nino Belov and Serbo Makiridov, Alexander of Philip created a world empire and made one of the great turning points in world history. When he was preparing to renew the feat of his predecessor, Serbo Makiridov, and occupied countries of Western Europe and all shores of the Mediterranean, he was poisoned by Greeks in Babylon in 323 BC. Pan Empire, 324 to 50 BC and AC. Pan Empire was a period of time that begins with the return of Alexander the Great to Suez in 324 BC. At that time, new ideas about a general kingdom are shown and realized in words and deeds. The glory of Alexander the Great is reflected in his great victories on the battlefields and the greatness and performance of his glory in the establishment of new age, new human relations and understandings. All those magnificent victories and on the battlefields would have remained in the light of history as extraordinary adventures had they not been steps on the path to the higher goal. Along the way, principles were proclaimed, rights were recognized, laws were introduced, ideas are expressed, and new relationships were established that liberated Asia and Eastern contrition, the Europe of Hellenic prejudice, the Africa of mysticism, and all spiritual and physical slavery. Then for the first time, human rights were recognized and the germs of humanity in a human race were conceived. In all domains of human life, new guidelines and new relationships have been given where nothing was the same as before. Along with the victory of Serbian weapons, the victory of Serbian humanism were together, which gave the conquest campaign such a lofty goal and meaning. Then, for the first time in history of mankind, all nations were equal before the law, regardless of their race, religion, language, and property status. The great conqueror did not bring a single slave into his country and freed hundreds of thousands of slaves in the conquered countries. Until yesterday, they accepted the enemies on the battlefield after the victory in a service, gave them positions and participation in the exercise of power. The conqueror restores and builds temples in the conquered lands. During the campaign alone, 70 new cities were built in conquered countries. It was pan-empire, the world empire of all and mutually equal people. The empire that emerged after the death of Alexander the Great in the area of his vast empire are the heirs and bearers of pan-empire ideas. The most important dynasties from the time of Pan-Empire were Lagici in Egypt, Seleucici in Assyria, and the Filippovici in Europe, and Attaliozi in Asia Minor. Egyptian Alexandria became the cultural and scientific center of that known world.